25,000 robots. Contracted, funded, rolling toward Russian trenches right now. Not drones, not missiles. Armed ground robots, and Ukrainian soldiers are operating them from 20 kilometers away. On April 13th, 2026, Ukraine captured an enemy position. No infantry crossed that ground. 0 casualties. The position just fell. Russian soldiers looked up from their trenches, unloaded their rifles into the machine walking toward them, and then did something that has never happened in this war before. They surrendered to the robot. Russia has no answer for what comes next. And what comes next is 25,000 of them. April 13th, 2026. Zelensky goes on record with a statement that will be in military textbooks.
В історії цієї війни ворожу позицію було взято виключно безпілотними платформами НРК та дронами. Окупанти здалися в полон, і цю операцію виконали без участі піхоти і без втрат з нашого боку.
No Ukrainian soldiers crossed that ground. 0 casualties. Position taken. Analysts have noted the position was likely a secondary strong point, not a major fortress. That's worth saying, but here's why it doesn't actually change the story. Military doctrine doesn't shift when you win the big battle. It shifts when a new tactic works once, because once means it's real, and real means it scales. The first tank didn't win the war. The first tank proved tanks worked. Everything after that was production. Ukraine just proved the tactic works. And 5 days later, on April 18th, Defense Minister Fedorov announced contracts for 25,000 ground robotic systems. First half of 2026, already double everything procured in all of 2025. Russia's entire war strategy is built on one bet: outlast the humans, accept losses, apply pressure, wait for the other side to run out of men. Ukraine just changed what it's sending. Let's walk through what April 13th actually looked like, because the mechanics here are what make the 25,000 number meaningful. Phase 1. FPV drones and surveillance UAVs arrive first, not to bomb, to map every trench line, every bunker entrance, every firing position, all of it cataloged before a single ground robot moves. Simultaneously, those drones go to work from above. Autonomous targeting systems capable of maintaining lock even through electronic jamming. Russian soldiers can't lift their heads without being tracked. You stick your head up, the drone notices. You keep your head down. You're blind and you can't move. That's not a battle. That's a cage. Phase 2. The ground robots enter the death zone. That 20 to 25 kilometer band where drone saturation makes daytime human movement a genuinely terminal career decision. Ukrainian infantry commanders used to stare at that ground on a map and quietly calculate the casualty cost of crossing it. The robots don't calculate. They roll, armed, armored, and completely indifferent to being shot. A Ukrainian drone operator with call sign Bambi, and we can only assume that call sign has a story behind it, describe what Russian soldiers are facing. A ground robot comes toward your position and there's nothing you can do. If you shoot a person in the chest, they stop. If you shoot a robot, it feels no pain. And there's a person behind the screen who will respond. Now here's the psychological dimension that doesn't get said clearly enough. Russian doctrine has always relied on one core assumption. The enemy bleeds too. You apply enough pressure, you accept enough of your own casualties, and eventually the human cost becomes unacceptable to the other side. Robots remove that calculus entirely. There is no cost threshold that makes a machine stop attacking. It doesn't reach a point of exhaustion. It doesn't watch its friends die and reconsider. It doesn't negotiate with itself at 3 in the morning about whether this is worth it. The surrender near Lyman, 3 Russian soldiers giving themselves up to an armed ground robot, isn't weakness. It's completely rational behavior in a situation their entire military tradition gave them no tools to handle. Your weapons aren't stopping it. Your training didn't cover it, and it is still coming. What exactly is the play? Let's talk about December, because April 13th didn't come out of nowhere. Ukraine has been running this experiment for months, and the results before April were already extraordinary. In December 2025, a Ukrainian robot, reportedly the dev droid, held a defensive position, alone, for 45 days. Operators controlled it remotely from 24 kilometers away. Maintenance and reloading every 48 hours. A machine held ground for 6 weeks straight without a single Ukrainian soldier present at the position. For context, the Battle of Rorke's Drift, which you guys probably will know from the film, and which military historians cite as one of the great defensive stands in British history, lasted 12 hours. The dev droid held for 45 days. Then in January, 3 Russian soldiers surrendered to an armed ground robot near Lyman. First documented surrender to a machine in this conflict. That same month, Ukraine's 3rd Assault Brigade released footage of a kamikaze robot carrying 12 anti-tank mines advancing on Russian troops who were hiding from drones, a machine hunting soldiers who were already hiding from other machines. April 13th wasn't a fluke, it was the graduation ceremony. Here's where the scale becomes genuinely difficult to process. In the first quarter of 2026, Ukrainian ground robotic systems completed between 22,000 and 24,500 missions. March alone reportedly exceeded 9,000 missions in a single month. That's 300 robot missions a day, every single day. To put that in a frame that lands immediately, in the entire Falklands War, the British flew roughly 1,800 combat sorties over 74 days. Ukraine is running 300 robot missions in a single day in March, routinely. This is not a pilot program. This is an industrialized operational tempo. Behind it, 280 companies, 550 distinct systems, a procurement agency that has already signed 19 contracts worth roughly $250 to $268 million with domestic manufacturers. And the tuition fees for all of this, it should be noted, have been extraordinary. Now, Fedorov wants 25,000 more systems on contract by June. 25,000 isn't an ambition, it's a purchase order. The companies exist, the contracts are being signed. The industrial base is already running at the pace that produced 300 missions a day. Silicon Valley has sandboxes. Ukraine has a war. Now let's talk about the specific reason Russia's countermeasures aren't working. Because Ukraine has robots tells you nothing. The details are where this gets serious. Ratel H. The one that made Russia's electronic warfare teams quietly furious, and they have every right to be. Originally a logistics carrier, moves ammo forward, evacuates wounded back. Useful, unglamorous work. Then in early 2026, it was upgraded with a fiber-optic FPV drone launch module. Here's why that is a problem Russia cannot currently solve. Standard radio-controlled drones can be jammed. Ukraine spent 2 years dealing with that. Russia spent significant money, years and real investment, building jamming infrastructure to exploit exactly that vulnerability. Fiber-optic control runs through a physical cable. There is no radio signal to intercept. There is no frequency to block. You cannot jam a cable. Russia's electronic warfare investment, expensive, sophisticated, years in the making, is irrelevant against it. Not partially effective, not degraded, irrelevant. That's not propaganda, that's physics. The support layer behind the Ratel H runs just as quietly. Termit carries 20 anti-tank mines per run across terrain that would get a human engineer killed before his third. Russian armored columns advanced through what their reconnaissance said was clear ground. Termite was there 4 hours ago and had somewhere else to be. Zimai, carrying up to 1,000 kilograms, has been running resupply through the death zone around Pokrovsk since December without a soldier on board. Russia targets the supply routes. Zimai doesn't have a nervous system to particularly care about that. At the sharp end, Ardal and Protector provide fire support, grenade launcher, and a Browning M2.50 caliber, respectively. The M2 has been in continuous military service since 1933. It has now outlasted 2 world wars, the Cold War, the fall of the Berlin Wall, and is currently being mounted on autonomous Ukrainian ground robots in 2026. Remarkable second act for a weapon that many in this audience will remember from entirely different contexts. The designer, John Browning, died in 1926. He would have thoughts. Now here's where the cost argument lands concretely. February 2026, Ukraine's 3rd Assault Brigade, NC-13 unit, Operation Samurai. 2 ground robots pushed through an industrial zone between Zaporizhzhia Zaporizhia and Donetsk toward Russian ammunition depots. Russia threw everything at stopping them. 4 FPV drones, 7 airstrikes, 6 artillery rounds. The robots completed the mission. The depot exploded. Russia spent tens of thousands of dollars in munitions trying to stop 2 machines worth a fraction of that. The machines didn't notice the price difference. And that cost asymmetry, where stopping the robot costs more than deploying it, is precisely why Russia has no answer. Every time they try to stop one, they're losing the economic argument. At scale, that compounds into a structural problem with no clean solution. Ukraine's Hornet drone has reportedly begun targeting Russian military vehicles with significantly reduced human involvement in the terminal attack phase. Built-in targeting software maintains lock under jamming. The operator sets the mission, the system finds the truck. AI-assisted autonomous targeting. Documented, reported, active. The line between tool and decision maker is blurring on a live front right now. Not in a lab, not in a policy paper. On the Eastern Front in Ukraine in April 2026. When historians write about when autonomous warfare actually began as a deployed reality rather than a concept, this is the period they'll point to. And Russia does not have an equivalent system in the field. Now, let's be fair, Russia is not helpless. Russia has genuinely sophisticated electronic warfare capabilities. It has developed its own robotic systems. The Courier combat robot and the Lyaguchka kamikaze vehicle exist and are being used. But here is the structural problem no press release can fix. Ukraine has 280 companies producing 550 plus systems in a competitive, rapidly iterating ecosystem. Russia has a handful of state-adjacent programs operating under sanctions that limit access to critical components. You cannot out-iterate 280 companies with 3. The Russian army is, at this point, the only military in this conflict where the personnel department is busier than the procurement department. In conventional weapons development, a 3-year cycle is considered fast. In Ukraine's robotic sector, the cycle runs in weeks. Battlefield feedback goes directly to engineers. Engineers update the system. Updated system ships back to the front. Russia found this out the hard way with electronic warfare. They built expensive jamming infrastructure targeting radio-controlled systems. Ukraine responded with fiber optics. The entire investment became strategically redundant, not degraded, redundant. That pattern, Russia spends, Ukraine adapts, Russia's spending becomes irrelevant, has now repeated multiple times across 2 years of this war. Russia is not getting faster at responding to it. Ukraine, under the pressure of necessity, is getting faster at generating it. Let's bring this back to what the 25,000 number means on the ground, because it's easy to say and hard to visualize. Ukraine has a manpower problem. The mobilization debates are real. Replacing soldiers killed in action is increasingly difficult. This is not a secret, and Fedorov doesn't pretend otherwise. His stated goal, 100% of frontline logistics carried out by robotic systems. Every ammunition resupply, every casualty evacuation, every forward position run through the death zone, unmanned. That's not futurism. Robots have been running resupply around Pokrovsk since December 2025. Fedorov himself noted that 6 months ago, robot casualty evacuation was rare. Today, it's routine. The transition from experiment to doctrine happened quietly at the front, while the procurement debates were still ongoing in Kyiv. The cost side of this is just as stark. High-end ground robots run between $7,500 and $22,000. A tank takes years and millions. A lost robot gets replaced in weeks. One Ukrainian lieutenant put it plainly, "We lose about 3 robots a day. When we consider we're saving our infantrymen's lives, this is a small price." Commander Bletky of the 3rd Army Corps has projected 30% of infantry units replaced by robotic systems by end of year, 80% long-term. Take that with salt. Commanders are professionally optimistic about their own assets, but the direction is not in dispute. And the loss that matters most was never the robot. Finding a replacement for a lost soldier is Ukraine's biggest problem. Finding a replacement for a lost robot is a procurement email. Ukraine is no longer just receiving Western technology, it's selling its own. Zelensky has signed 10-year defense agreements with Gulf states, Saudi Arabia and Qatar among those reported. And on April 14th, one day after the position capture, Ukraine showed the world exactly what they're buying. The headline system at the exhibition, the Sitchin strike drone. 1,400-kilometer range, 40-kilogram warhead, operational and active electronic warfare environments. Russia's logistics infrastructure, command nodes, and manufacturing facilities are all inside that radius. The ground robot war and the long-range strike program aren't separate stories. They're the same strategy at different distances. This asymmetric logic has already proven itself at sea. Ukraine's naval drones, Mura and Sea Baby, have pushed Russia's Black Sea fleet back to port. Small, cheap, expendable. A fleet that cannot leave port has already lost the sea. One footnote worth watching. A San Francisco company called Foundation has delivered 2 Phantom Mk-1 humanoid robots, 175 centimeters, 80 kilograms, navigate stairs and doors, to Ukraine for field evaluation. Still experimental. But experimental in a war zone moves at a different pace than experimental in a demo room. Russia bet on one thing. Ukraine will run out of men first. Not an unreasonable bet historically. Larger population, deeper reserves, willingness to absorb staggering casualties. That combination has ended wars before. Russia read the history and backed the playbook. The problem is Ukraine changed the unit. Robots don't run out. Robots don't need mobilization legislation. Robots don't lie awake at 3 in the morning calculating whether this is still worth it. And when a robot is lost, the response is a production order, not a funeral. Russia has counters for the army Ukraine had. It does not have counters for the army Ukraine is building. Not yet. And the gap is not closing. This is still just the opening act. Subscribe if you want the next one. Bell's there. And drop your read in the comments. Where this goes from here is the most interesting military question of 2026, and your take is worth hearing. See you in the next one.